Live from Kent, this is The Late Late Show with Toby Payne-Cook and Ed Finch. And you are listening live.
Good evening. Can you hear me over this ridiculously loud intro music? Music's working this week and Ed's in on time. I'm in a few minutes, a few seconds late. Everything's good. Welcome. It's wrath time, anger time. Wrath, the 7 deadly sins. We're working through the 7 deadly sins and we're on to our third one, and we're going to focus on wrath in teaching.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org or join in the conversation by downloading the Podbean app and following Teachers Talk Radio. Hashtag TT Radio.
Good evening, Ed.
Good evening. Good evening. Are you particularly wrathful tonight? Are you feeling that way?
No, not. Is that a word? Wrathful? I suppose it could be. I am not really. I'm a bit stressed, but I'm self-inflicted.
Right.
I am hosting on Friday night in my house my leaving party, and I've decided to do this because I like hosting. But I'm out tomorrow night at book club, so I've had to do all my bits of food preparation this afternoon on my day off. So I've had a busy afternoon. I've filled the fridge full of booze. People are bringing me booze if they're going to drink booze, but I wanted to get pre-chilled stuff and all that sort of stuff. So yeah. There we go. So and then I've got reports to write. And
a bottle of white wine, do you? And then for that to be lukewarm.
No, exactly.
You don't want that. You want that to be, if you're going to drink white wine, which I'd advise against, but if you're going to, you want it cold.
I'm going to not make the mistake that I made at Gemma's 18th birthday party of having 2 gin and tonics and some mojitos before then drinking Prosecco like it was beer all evening. I'm just going to drink beer. I might have some red wine with cheese at the end of the evening.
Well, very wise. I mean, I don't think I can. You're not considering port.
Well, there's a story behind that, because when I had some friends around, a small from work, we had some cheese. We've got a little group of us called Cheese on a WhatsApp group, and we love our cheese, and so we do this occasionally. And but I served some port, and we drank a lot of it. But it was a bottle that had been open, and it had been open for a while. And two female colleagues drank rather a lot of this port, as did I, but I'm a bit more robust and a lot larger than they are. And they were wiped out the next day. So I think no one's going to want me to serve port, although fresh bottles of port would be good. But we've got to go into sports day on Saturday, so we've got sports at school, so we're all going to be a bit hungover on sports day, Saturday morning.
Sports day is a day that you don't want too much of a head. I agree. It's a shame. I'm a big port fan.
I'm a huge port fan.
I love a bit of port. I don't buy it often, because if I buy it, I drink it, and if I drink it, you're quite right. It does give you a sleepless night. If you're me, I think it's all the sugar keeps me awake, and then it does produce a hangover. But it's very lovely. Once in a while, it's worth it.
Well, maybe. Yeah, yes, I like
give
port.
You the same hangover that you get from absinthe, if that's in its favour.
No, absinthe. Don't go there. Is my advice.
Or at least very not often.
Yes. So no, I'm not feeling wrathful at all. Do we? Yeah. So, but before we go into wrath, how's your week been?
Oh, it's been long, hasn't it? I can't really think what's happened this week. My offspring completed their GCSEs, so that's a good thing, isn't it?
It is a good thing.
Everything kind of went how it was meant to go, which, very lucky. I can't remember when all these were, but he's very lucky with the last history paper. That was a bit of a gift. Most of the kids were complaining. They thought it was the Nazi paper and it would all be about the Nazis. And instead there was a question about, some people out there will be nodding with this, along with this one. Lots of kids were very disappointed. The question was about the culture in Weimar Germany prior to the rise of the Nazis.
Yes.
Now, a lot of kids wouldn't have a lot to say on this one, but my kid and I attended every screening in the Picture House Weimar Cinema season a couple of months ago. So,
Wow.
as a result, a lot to say on that subject. In fact, so
Wow.
much they overcooked it and didn't leave himself enough time for the last question. But we try. Anyway, that was a spot of luck. I think other young people
But
up and
isn't
down the
that?
country.
I've just seen Tom Rogers, who is with us, who is a history teacher.
He's
Yes, it was a
history.
horror for most. What?
Yeah.
But I thought history. I thought you had some choice about what you could write
No,
about.
very, very, very little choice. No, that's how that paper works. Is
Oh,
there's your question, away you go, buddy. And if you've thought that whole paper was about the rise of the Nazis, and you've memorised everything about the Beer Putsch and onwards, then you're in trouble. Whereas my lovely one had plenty to say about. I don't know. I'd like to see what he wrote. To be honest, clever, clever, clever. Anyway, that went well. Physics
yeah.
went well. That's all good. And then since then, obviously, the only way to reward that. What's the right way to reward a child who's completed the GCSEs? Of course, you nip into Exeter and buy a copy of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, don't you? That's what's been happening in this house.
What's Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom? Educate me.
My lord, the people in Radioland, they've got their heads in their hands, they're shaking. It's like when Lord Judge doesn't know about the Arctic monkeys or something. You know about the Zelda video game franchise? Of course you do. The Ocarina of Time and all that sort of business.
Nope.
About a young chap called Link who adventures around the Kingdom of Hyrule, solving puzzles generally in order to rescue Princess Zelda from some terrible fate. And this is the most recent outing. It came out about a month ago, maybe, but I knew that if that came into the house, all revision would stop.
Yes.
So originally the promise was if you did very well in your GCSEs, you would get that. And then I thought, no, hang on a sec, he's not going to get the results till nearly the end of August. So that's
Indeed.
too long a wait, isn't it? It's too long a wait for the latest Zelda outing. So
Yeah.
so we did. I said, there you go. Anyway, that's pretty exciting. Other than that, that one hasn't left the house. I've been driving to and fro. I don't think I've done anything interesting or exciting.
I have, Ed. Haven't I? I have,
You've been,
since we last spoke.
Well, you have. So would you like to tell us about the Black Deer Music Festival and the joy it brought you?
Yes, I would. The
thought
Black
you
Deer
would.
Music Festival. It was the fourth Black Deer Music Festival. There were 2 years off for the COVID, and so there was one last year, and then two before COVID, and I went for one day last year. This year I had a weekend ticket, but went in daily. Got a lift from a friend on Friday, so had a few beers and some gin and tonic at the end of the evening. Bit well, not messy, but just a little bit leery by the end of the evening, I'd say. But managed to do a bit of dancing in the disco. And then Saturday, I drove myself in and was on my own, but I didn't bump into anyone I knew. I was expecting to, being relatively local, only half an hour from my house. And teaching lots of children and knowing lots of sort of middle class people. I was a bit disappointed that I didn't bump into anyone that I knew, but I bumped into lots of nice people watching bands and talking, that sort of camaraderie, get in a crowd. It was very hot on the Saturday, and I got a bit worn out by that, probably slightly hungover as well. And so I didn't watch.
You got to keep hydrating.
I did keep hydrated. I kept hydrated, but I just got a bit fed up with. I got a bit fed up with the folding chairs and the sort of part-time. The people who were sort of picnicking, having a nice picnic whilst having some music floating over.
One time I went to the Cambridge Folk Festival, which is a very revered folk festival, isn't it, Cambridge? It was wall-to-wall people on folding chairs. Who were sitting, they'd staked their place early in the day, a whole row of like 6 people who'd gone to every Cambridge Folk Festival since they were cool in the 1960s. They were there camped out, and I've never been to a festival where I've seen so many Daily Mails. It absolutely alarmed me. This is a music festival, but the paper of choice appears to be the Daily Flipping Mail. I felt exceedingly uncomfortable. There were some great gigs, it's great bands I really was looking forward to seeing, but it felt kind of weird and dead to me. I don't know, other people didn't have that experience, but possibly one of the reasons was that I wasn't drinking, because I knew I was going to have to drive back from Cambridge to Oxford at some appalling time in the night when... Anyway.
Well, it's really nice, though, not...
Folding chairs. Let's have a campaign against folding chairs at festivals. It's all wrong. Stand up and pee where you stand like a man. That's what I say.
I don't think I don't have a problem with the folding chair
Oh, I
per
do.
se, but what I have a problem with
It's the
the
people who sit on them.
staying. Yes, it's a bit like I have a problem with the fact that they just people who stake out their place and are there
Yeah.
just in the back of the arena, sort of in towards the back of the arena field, a long way behind the mixing desk. They're not feeling the music. They're not really
No.
seeing what's going on stage.
You get the same at
And
Cropredy, which is a great music festival in many ways, but you get people who've been coming every year for 20 years or however long it's been running, and they bring great big ground sheets, like out of tents, but great big ones, and they peg them out to
yeah,
sort of like claim a space, like
I
they're
know.
like putting their towels on the things. And it's like they've been going around, and the point of it is that they go there every year and they meet up with a bunch of friends that maybe they don't see through the rest of the year, but they see them at Crop Renew. Probably as the years go by, the folding seats have got a bit comfier, haven't they? Probably got more
Mm.
expensive ones, and you know they probably bring in a cooler now because they don't really like the idea of walking down to the beer tent and queuing for an hour
Oh
to
no,
get
they'll
some
bring in a cool box. Definitely, they'll have
Yeah.
great festival trolley full of
And
all
then I
sorts
feel
of.
guilt if I stand in front of them because I'm like, oh, they're sitting on their little chairs. If I
Yeah,
stand
they've
here, I'll be
paid their
obscuring
ticket for the
their view of
festival.
the
They've got this
stage.
royal box.
If you want to if you want to sit there, you can sit there. But I'm going to stand in front of you because I like standing. I think at a festival it's a standing thing, and so that way I can rock from side to side. Not dance. I'm not a
Tap
hooligan,
your
but
feet.
I could tap my feet if I want to do it in the sludge. But if I stand in front of them, I will know that I'm blocking their view, and
Mm.
I'll be able to feel their eyes boring into the back of my neck, which will compromise my enjoyment. It just makes them even more selfish, I think.
Yeah, I think but at Black Deer near the stage, if you walk down I walked down the left hand side of the sort of arena for the main stage, the outdoor stage, and if you went quite a long way down, virtually almost sort of perpendicular to the or parallel, I don't know, whatever, virtually at the sort of but front left of stage or front stage right,
Mm-hmm.
though that we called, and then just walk in, and as long as I was there if I wanted to get right near the front, very near the front, as long as I was there 5 minutes before whatever act it was that came on, even the
Yeah, you could
Pretenders,
have no trouble at all.
I have no trouble
Another
just
technique
weaving
that
through people.
I enjoy walking
Whereas you
down the
can't do that
side
at
until I'm
Glastonbury.
level with the mixing desk, strike straight in, get to
Mm,
the mixing desk, and there'll be a cable tray running from the front of the
yes,
mixing desk straight down, and you can walk along that like you're walking a plank. People
yeah.
generally don't stand on it; they don't. So you can usually get straight into the heart of the mosh, straight down the cable tray, and you can't lose your friends. Then, if you've got like 5 friends with you, you can say, "Stay here. I'll be able to find you." You will because you can go have a wee wee down a cable tray. You meet your friends.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you can spend most of the gig wandering around, wondering where you left them.
yeah. So
You've got to
that
have a
was.
system.
You've got to have a
You were
system. So
tempted to have a flag on a very, very, very long fishing pole,
that was the
maybe with some
way. That still
LEDs
is the
on
way at Glastonbury, I think. But there's an awful lot of people with the same flag on the same pole.
it.
Um,
Yeah,
um,
individuality is so similar across the
yeah.
internet. Oh,
I
we'll be
think
really clever, will you?
but
Yeah.
creative flags. I do like quite creative flags with funny slogans on. That's quite amusing. But I think so. But all in all, Black Deer Festival was great. I thought there was the great performances,
I would
lovely
like you to
festival
tell
site,
me about
good
your
food.
3 favourite performances of because actually music festivals are really about bumping into amazing people when you're keen
Yeah.
for a beer and then losing them and never seeing them again. That's what they're really about. Or going around the stalls and going, I will never buy any of this rubbish. Who does? But people do. But
Three
we
favourite
pretended about music. So 3 favourite performances of the festival. You'll have 5 minutes. Your time starts now.
I'm going to do 3 on the main stage, and then I'm going to
Yeah.
mention a couple of little minor ones. Okay.
You
So
were told 3, but go for it.
all right. Okay. So there was a lot of good stuff, but I did enjoy watching the Pretenders. They're not a very Black Deary sort of band because
No.
Chrissy Hind, absolutely phenomenal. She's 71. She's proper punk rock and roll.
Really 71. Flipping it.
She's
We're all getting
amazing.
on, mate, aren't we?
Well, I think someone told me she's 71. I haven't verified that, but I can
I'm gonna
believe it because
verify it on
they started in
Wikipedia right now.
78 and she
Carry
was
on.
probably in her
Pretenders.
mid 20s then.
The
Sorry?
Black Deer is mostly a
Americana, so it's
isn't
mostly
it?
country tinged, country folk tinged rock.
But
So
the
the
thing is, if you
Pretenders,
get the Pretenders in,
yeah,
what is going to happen there is some people will buy some tickets.
yeah,
She was born on the 7th of September in 1951. That makes
there
her
you go.
sound proper old, doesn't it?
She's nearly
1951.
72.
Yeah, yeah.
She
There you
does
go.
not look 72. She does not act 72, and she's the only remaining Pretender. I think that the band were just great. The guitarist James Walborn, I think he's called Walborn or something like that. He was brilliant, absolutely. They played the only sort of country song they played, Thumbelina from, I think, Learning to Crawl, their third album, I think. That's kind of got a country riff on it, a country riff, and and he just played it super fast at the end. Oh, they were just tight and great and rocking. That she moaned twice that she said I wasn't expecting such an old crowd because the crowd weren't as mobile as they should have been, and I was a bit disappointed about that. But they were tight, they were good, and it was just a good bit of rock and roll. And then
Wikipedia, can I tell you? Wikipedia is under the impression that Martin Dale Chambers,
yeah,
drummer, is an original member. So there's,
he
according to
was a
Wikipedia, there's
member.
2 original members in the
He has
lineup.
been playing with them until quite recently. He was booted out of the band for a bit, apparently, but he's been playing with them until quite recently. But definitely, the drummer did not look 70-ish or late 60s-ish.
He has
So
served 2 separate tenures with the band.
mm,
Yeah. Good
so
heavens.
I know. Anyway, so other two, I
Played with
then
Mott the Hoople as well, can I tell you? That's
my
interesting.
favourite probably performance was, I think, Lucas Nelson and the Promise of the Real. So Lucas Nelson is the son of Willie Nelson,
Well, that's
who
near enough to God for me.
we all know near enough God, yeah. And Willie Nelson's great mates with Neil Young, I think, and Promise of the Real have backed Neil Young on his 2019 tour. So they were his sort of Crazy Horse band. So they were just a really good band. The bassist and the drummer were just phenomenally good. Played quite a lot of mellow, country rock, I suppose, really country blues rock. Not, but there was some kind of. It was quite Neil Young and Crazy Horse-esque. There was a good bit of crunchy guitar noise, and then there was a beautiful. I don't know the name of the song, but he played. Lucas Nelson played a Willie Nelson song solo on acoustic, and that was just sort of mesmerizing. That was lovely. Steve Earle was amazing. You were very told me that I needed to go and see Steve Earle. I know Steve Earle, but I don't know him as well as you do. And he was pretty captivating, and he just played solo. Told some good stories, some very sad stories about his son's death, and then I'm going to link that to Roth later on. Actually, something he said about something or other in a moment. And then so those are my 3 really. But there were some other great performances in the tent. Midlake, I liked Midlake, American band. They were good. This is the Kit were good.
Love This
Folky,
Is the Kit. They're
bit
great.
groovy.
If
Yeah,
anybody
nice.
out there in Radio Land doesn't know This Is the Kit, I would strongly advise them to listen to a bit of This Is
Yeah,
the
really
Kit.
nice. She's got a lovely voice, and it's just nice, quite a nice groove to their tunes, I think. And then there was a lovely tent. There was a tent there called the Cafe Nero. So Cafe Nero sourced the artists, and you could buy your Cafe Nero coffee and sit down and listen. And they had some good little, up and coming, sort of not even signed artists playing some nice stuff. And so that was quite a nice place to sit and down. And then yeah, that's the main cut of my jib, I'd say.
Yeah, there was no way I was going to come this year. This term is just it's
Book
crushing,
yourself in
isn't
for
it?
next year, though, Ed. And they're selling the tickets are only
yeah.
133 quid at the moment for next year.
Well,
Whereas I bought mine for
very
160. I'm not going to buy one now. I'm not going to buy one yet. But this early bird thing's all a bit of a game these days, isn't it?
It is a bit of a game, but yeah, no, I'd like a bit of that. I'd like a bit of festival action, and I haven't been to a proper festival in some time. Meant to be going to Lake Fest. I think we discussed that last week, so I shan't say any more on that. But it involves finding childcare. So if anybody knows any people who like looking after children who live in the Gloucestershire area, do get in touch, because otherwise I ain't going if I'm taking kids, I can tell you. I want a
No.
proper festival experience, and no driving home at night. I want a camp in a field full of snoring drunken beggars. I want people peeing on the fly sheet in the middle of the night for the full experience. And that constant sound of laughing gas canisters going off. That's a
Oh
joyful
yes,
festival
that's
sound, isn't it?
that. But I think that there's so many festivals now. They're quite sedate in many ways. You know, there's a at Black Deer. There was a small percentage of there was some good fun dance stuff on Sunday night actually. And it had a good boogie too. Um, and there was a few sort of proper festivalers there watching that, bouncing around.
Mm-hmm.
But most of it was sort of day trippers and old
Yes.
sort of country fans. Um, but there you
So
go.
less laughing gas and more bitter.
Yeah,
Pints
more
of foamy
bitter.
pints of lukewarm bitter, not so much of the canisters. But
No,
it's all good. Anyway, festivals are great. Possibly might have bored some of the audience there, but just for you, I have queued up a bit of Neil Young for the end of, not Neil Young, sorry, a bit of Steve Earle for the end of the show. Could do some Neil
lovely,
Young, but
lovely.
that's queued up for us there. It's not particularly wrathful, but I think. Actually, can you think of any particularly wrathful songs? I don't know, "Killing in the Name of," perhaps. But
That was played by the DJ, "Killing in the Name."
well, of
An
course,
angry song. Yeah, there's lots of angry songs, but not necessarily angry. Well, obviously, most heavy metal songs sound angry, but the
But
lyrics
when
aren't
you drill
necessarily
down, when you
angry.
listen to the lyrics, they're all "I want to hold your hand," aren't you?
The lyrics
It's
aren't
all
angry,
those
no, necessarily, but the sound of the bass and the sound of the
sound of it.
drums
Oh, it's a
is.
cross sound, isn't it? You listen to it, it makes you feel cross.
I
And if you
don't
like
like heavy
feeling
metal.
cross,
I like heavy rock. I don't mind heavy rock, but heavy metal, no.
where do you draw the line? Do you like Deep
Well,
Purple?
I think. Oh, I don't know if it's being
Well, I think that might
screamed.
be a question for another day when you've done a bit of googling, isn't it? But yeah,
Good, right?
I'm not
Okay.
really sure where you draw the line. And I
No.
think in small quantities, I really enjoy some metal, but it has to be smallish quantities. I'm like, do you
Excuse
know
me.
what I'm really in the mood for? Some Metallica. I put on Metallica, and for about 3 tracks, I think this is the best music in the world.
It's
And then after
phenomenal,
about
isn't it?
three
Though,
tracks,
in
I
some
start
ways, yeah.
thinking, I can't be bothered with this. So,
No. Anyway, but punks. There's a lot of angry punk, isn't there?
there's a lot of angry punk, and there's a lot of angry punks around. You will meet them. Um, but are they
Um,
wrathful? Let's move on. What is the difference, according to you and your comprehensive research that you put in before this show? What's the difference between anger and wrath? Because wrath is is a sin, isn't it? Wrath is one of the sins, and yet we talk about the wrath of God all the
yeah.
time. It's one of the most common
To be
things.
honest, it's a word that I don't ever use. It's a word that I don't really know its true meaning. I've not done any research.
And
I
it's
assume I sort of
intemperate
equate it to rage. I equate it not anger. Anger can be sort of silent, can't it? I suppose, and pent up, and whereas it's sort of. But I don't know. I think you've probably got a much better definition than I have.
Well, according to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the neutral act of anger becomes the sin of wrath when it is directed against an innocent person, when it is unduly strong or long lasting, or when it desires excessive punishment. But then, and that's fine, So it's right to be angry. We should be angry about injustice. It's right to be angry when you realise that the fluffy-haired prime minister has been lying to you and the rest of the country quite deliberately for some time. That's right to be angry. It comes wrath when it is unduly strong. When you get too cross, I don't see how you can be too cross about some things. About the death of hundreds of people in the channel, which is going unmarked by the news media because it's not a story anymore and things. Like, how can you be too angry about that? I guess if it's making you act in an intemperate or unwise way, maybe it's sinful that way. When it desires excessive punishment, I understand that.
But isn't it? If just think about it as applied to teaching, so or teaching or
Yeah,
teachers,
yeah,
then
right.
I, I think that we really have to train ourselves, don't we, to be strategically stern, and then be able to flip, just flip into that, and not to be wound up by the children. So if the children are just whatever, kicking off or not kicking off or just, and they're just, then that little stare, that little look, or that short, not a shout, but a short, sharp change of tone of voice, change
like
of intonation, and
Like-
then you sort of snap straight out of it. So there's no wrath in that. There's no wrath in that. But as Thomas just said in the question in the chat, is anger in the classroom a sign the teacher has lost control, or a natural reaction that, as long as controlled, is a good thing? So I think teachers do and can and have. I think I will admit to having lost control on occasion in the classroom. It's not doesn't happen very often, where because I'm not my problem is that I am really, really patient. No. My problem is I'm really impatient, but I'm very tolerant. So I tolerate stuff that most teachers don't tolerate. But I'm impatient. I expect children to just be intrinsically motivated and intrinsically interested. And so I think a good teacher, a kind of a good behavior management teacher, a good classroom sort of someone who maintains order very well in the classroom, is probably not very tolerant, but incredibly patient. So they don't tolerate anything. They don't tolerate any. So they clamp down on stuff, and they're really firm, clear boundaries, and anyone who wavers from that. Whereas, but they're very, very, very patient with they know. Whereas I suppose it's the ex-industrialist in me, and I've worked with adults and for quite a long time, and it's just adults have chosen to go into work and chosen to do that particular job, particularly in the work that I sort of did, and so we all have our off day occasionally, but you've not got to sort of, you're not going to. That's the challenge with teaching, isn't it? You've got to motivate people to do stuff they don't want to do, and that is the inherent challenge of it. And sometimes young people or old people don't want to do something they don't want to do, or they don't see the point of. And so but I do think that So if you, so it can happen, I think, and it's.
We can be
But
cross.
we
If
need
we
help
want
with
to get
that.
cross,
But to stop it from happening.
we're professionals, so we deal with it in a way which is appropriate to the situation. But that doesn't mean that we don't feel irritated or cross or angry. That's going to happen, and we refocus, and we're the professional in the room. But we are humans.
We are
Anyway.
humans. I think that's it. I think
Yeah, we're
Anyway.
we're humans, but we're doing a job, and we're being paid to do it, and we do it properly. And you can be very cross that a child is pushing your buttons, but you behave appropriately. And sometimes to show that little bit of anger, to show that is sometimes the right thing to do. It's usually probably not, to be honest with you, but once in a while.
I don't think it is. That's why. My first the person I took over from at my school, he was an old school science teacher, and he said, "You've got to show your teeth occasionally, Toby. You've got to show your teeth occasionally," and but and that's what I mean. That's the strategic showing of the teeth. I'm not sure that is a good thing, but the strategic showing of your teeth occasionally is better than the uncontrolled loss of control of yourself.
No, I don't know. I mean, I think we have one of the most common back to school dreams that people have on those first couple of nights in September before they're back in, is that dream of being in front of the class and having lost control of the class and becoming angry to the point of being out of control, and knowing that great sense of shame that you have in that dream, of being, I can't do this, I'm not in control of the situation, and I'm not in control of myself. And if you're not in control of yourself in the classroom, then bad things are going to happen. There's plenty of stories to attest to that, and plenty of people who've gone up in front of tribunals when it's happened. Yes, but he was very irritating. Yes, but you were the grown-up.
Absolutely.
Anyway, and I'm kind of wrath. It would sound terrible, wouldn't it? Like, I heard you. I'm going to have a little difficult conversation. Can you come into my office, please? And we will close the door for this one. No, I was passing your classroom earlier, and I heard intemperate shouting, which is not how we've agreed we deal with behaviour in this school. I'm sorry, I was feeling wrath. I was wrathful. The child had pushed my buttons too many times, and wrath overcame my natural hesitant temperance. Oh well, wrath, that's fine then. We all feel wrath from time to time. I don't really see it flying.
No.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Jones. Yes, you're quite right. I did speak to the teacher, and he said he did shout, and he did call him a little twerp, but he explained that he was feeling wrathful at the time, so I think we can all understand that and put this behind us. I think won't be the easiest conversation of the week, will it?
No, but I think we're very vulnerable, aren't we, as in that respect? So
Yeah.
so if I know friends who have been or are going through periods of anxiety or challenge in
Yeah.
their life, and I have been through those fairly
I bet
recently
you have.
myself,
Yeah.
and you can't go into a classroom if you're feeling like that.
No.
You've got you say I've
You
got to
should
have
have a
some
little
time out.
card to hand in. You should be able to say to your, your middle manager, whoever it is, listen, this stuff's been going on. I don't think I can handle myself. And if those 3 kids who like to press my buttons have a go at pressing my buttons, I don't know that I can handle that today, if I'm honest. We can't do
No.
that. We haven't got any capacity. I don't know about your sector. I don't think you're any better. We've got no capacity at all. We haven't got enough capacity to
No,
an adult
no,
in every room most days.
we don't have a huge amount where I
Idea that
am
you can say,
currently,
I'm
but I
really
think there'll probably be a bit
frightened.
more.
Please
I
don't
don't know.
make me do any teaching because I might say something I'd regret. Okay,
Yeah.
don't, and now go in and earn your money. I think that would be approximately how it went. Yeah.
No,
Well, listen,
I know.
there's a place for anger in our sector, and probably isn't in the classroom. But when we look at underfunding, and when we look at
Yes.
the absolute insult to our beautiful profession, which is being performed by our friends in Westminster, I think it's entirely right to be angry, and it's entirely right to want to make your position clear and to want to take action, whether it's through industrial action or whatever it is.
That's what my Steve Earle anecdote was going to be linked to that. Shall I do that? Should we do that after the news? Should we talk about industrial
for the
sort of
news
anger?
already. Oh,
Huh?
yes, look, it's 21:32. Yeah, go on. Roll the news, and then we'll have a Steve Earle anecdote. That's going to bring them back. Don't go anywhere, people.
It is. Don't go anywhere, people. 7.5 minutes. Bye-bye.
Live from Kent.
It's time for a fresh start to language learning. Pearson EdXL's new student-centred French, German and Spanish 2024 GCSEs cater to the needs of all learners, regardless of their background, ability or reason for studying. Rooted in learned language knowledge, their assessments are transparent and accessible, allowing all students to showcase their language skills. Through inclusive and relatable content, the new Pearson EdXL MFL GCSEs build a shared cultural capital that helps students develop an understanding of and appreciation for the wider world. Find out more at go.pearson.com/MFL GCSE 24.
This programme has been brought to you by the Happy Confident Company. Our clinically approved, ready-to-go wellbeing and mental health programme will help your pupils thrive. In only 10 minutes a day, you'll be able to deliver social and emotional learning and wellbeing tools throughout your school. To find out more, visit us at www.happyconfident.com.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The Telegraph reported this week on calls from some academics for schools to ban smartphones. The article refers to devices as extremely dangerous, over fears that they damage cognitive ability. The research by academics in Australia suggests that phones can be hazardous to children, as they have a negative effect on learning, social skills, and mental health. Dr. Mark Williams, an honorary professor of cognitive neuroscience at Macquarie University in Sydney, is quoted as saying that having a phone in a pocket or bag decreases working memory capacity, and that this means children don't learn as well. He goes on to say that there are zero benefits to smartphones in schools. Dr. Williams went on to add that other research studies have shown that smartphones also link to causes of depression, anxiety, and body dysmorphia. In Spain, phones have been banned from schools in some regions since 2015. University of Valencia academics found that pupils' test scores in some core subjects improved. In the USA, researchers at an Ohio hospital found that screen time led to lower brain functioning, and a study in Malaysia, published in 2020, found that the presence of a smartphone decreased the ability of undergraduates to accurately recall information. The current Department for Education advice in England is that head teachers are best placed to make decisions about phones and their use in school. The value of learning a foreign language is often discussed in schools, but in Germany, there have been calls for primary schools to scrap English lessons. The president of the German Teachers Association has said that schools should focus on German reading and maths instead. His remarks come as German students scored lower than their peers in other countries in the International Primary School Reading Survey. Heinz-Peter Meidinger told German broadcasters that focusing on English was a wrong priority, and that more attention should be paid to reading skills, writing skills, and arithmetic. The BBC reports that MPs have launched an inquiry into Ofsted school inspections, looking at how useful they are to parents, governors, and schools in England. Education Select Committee Chairman Robin Walker said Ofsted had an important role, but that there had been a groundswell of criticism in recent months. Ofsted itself has said it welcomed the inquiry, but that it had already made changes. MPs will consider how inspections affect the workload and well-being of school staff and pupils, and what contribution its reports make to helping schools improve. The issues likely to be discussed are the current system of awarding one overall grade to a school, and whether it is right to deem a school inadequate if inspectors raise concerns about child welfare. Parents, school governors, teachers and unions will be able to submit evidence alongside the government and Ofsted itself. Ofsted have already made changes, particularly to the complaints process, but the NAHT's Paul Whiteman said the changes didn't go far enough. Finally, in the West Midlands, the BBC reports that a 91-year-old former teacher is helping children develop their literacy skills from a living room. Diane Idles has 5 pupils she reads with over an online platform aimed at helping children progress with reading. She said the volunteering work had filled a huge hole in her life after the death of her husband. Mrs. Idles volunteers through the Bookmark Reading Charity, which matches trained volunteers with primary children struggling with reading. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, this week I'm going to answer the question we all want to know. What is the best presentation software? I do promise to give you an answer this week after leaving you on a cliffhanger, but first, a quick recap for those who missed last week or fast-forwarded me. Considering most lessons delivered in a classroom contain some sort of presentation, it's possible that our students are facing up to 1,000 presentations a year. This isn't a bad thing as we are presenting information, and that's what the software is designed to do. However, like a display you spend ages on, how long does it take before it stops being noticed? Do we really know what experience a pupil gets through a typical week in school? Are they being engaged, or do they know how to look like they are listening? Don't worry, there is no way I'm going to mention slant here if you were thinking that is where I was going next. The answer is there is no best presentation software. As I've already mentioned, there are lots of free and paid for presentation apps out there. The key to success is which one do you choose. This is where a lot of people go wrong. They ask someone else's opinion. What works for one may not work for another. The choice you make depends on 2 key words: purpose and audience. When you choose the method of presentation for a lesson, you need to be thinking about the best way to grab focus. In the end, our job is to encourage long-term remembering. So if the lesson is about remembering short text-based facts and you have powerful images that back up what you're saying, a looping PowerPoint presentation or equivalent may do the job. Do you want to embed a lot of web links and videos? Why not take a look at Wakelet, a free way to collect web links together and share them. You can present with it and then hand the link off for self-discovery. Most app developers today aim to make their apps intuitive, so changing things around shouldn't be too hard for you to get to grips with, and you may just find engagement rises, and in the end, that's what it's all about. What do you do to engage pupils? Let us know at TT Radio Official. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Back in the room. Ta-da! The unmuting of Ed.
Back in the room.
There he is. Back in the room.
Back in the room. Definitely
hello.
areas for rightful wrath in teaching, personal wrath, and possibly between colleagues in some schools. Is it right to be wrathful? No, see, because wrath is the sinful version. Now, but the bit I don't get is it's okay for God to be wrathful. It's the wrath of God. Although I think the wrath of God is a phrase which is much used, but I think not biblical. I think it's a modern phrase. But nonetheless, I think God's allowed to be wrathful. He's allowed to be very, very angry. He's allowed to flood the entire planet, kill everybody about from Noah and a few close family friends, isn't he? Although he did put a rainbow in the sky and say he wouldn't do it again. That's true. But at the end of days, he's going to wipe the lot of us out, isn't he? He's going to wipe us out, because he's going to say, oh, you're very sinful and bad. It's all right for some. So if it's
You're hearing God a lot, and I taught a cover lesson the other day on Sikhism. I taught an RS cover lesson, and in Sikhism they have one God, like we do in Christianity, but their God is neither male nor female, and I thought that was a nice touch actually, because we tend to call our God he, and there's all this nonsense with the synod about female priests and stuff.
It sounds wrong, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? It does sound wrong. Exactly.
I mean, I think God is kind of like a gas.
I don't think God exists myself, Ed.
Oh, all right. Well, you don't blow my cover, because I'm still the head teacher of a Church of England school. I've got a few more weeks left on that gig before I can go around publicly pronouncing my humanism.
Don't you have to just express sympathy with the Christian faith? You don't have to express your own.
Stones express sympathy with the devil. I have to, make sure that the school abides by what we would like to say, broadly Christian values is that word. And you go, well, it's like your British values, isn't it?
So Christian values, British values.
We respect people, and we think people should be treated nicely, and we should have respect for for nature, and people should be treated fairly. And you're like, I don't really know those are Christian values, guys. I'm quite happy to sign up to those. But
that's what God is for me. God is nature. God is nature. God is gas.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right? The gas bit was a Alan Partridge reference, which about 3 people in Radioland will have snorted loudly at, and everybody else will have not noticed. No. I don't know. As a humanist, I find my experience of the divine in the natural world, and in those people
swimming at Bucks Mills in the summer
beings that I connect with. I talk about spirituality as being, the interrelation between being at one with ourselves, in harmony with those around us, and in tune with the wide, wide world around and beyond us. That's how I talk about spirituality. And when the science inspector asks me, that's exactly what I shall say. I shall point at, But, for some people, they like an idea of the divine, which inspires those connections, maybe, So, anyway, I think once you start assuming that anybody has the same idea of God as you, then I think you're on a slippery
absolutely,
wicket.
Absolutely.
Anyway. Of course, we all agree, don't we? We all agree that God is love. Well, do we then? Oh, all right, maybe you don't. Of course, God is tolerant, isn't he? God loves the sinner. Well, does he, though? You go, okay, apparently not. There you go.
We've veered into God away from wrath.
Well, we're meant to be doing wrath, and more. Well, we've veered into God, and that's because we were thinking about the divine Steve Earle.
Yeah, Steve Earle. So Steve. The reason. So Steve Earle, during his set at Black Deer, I believe he's playing at Glastonbury this weekend as well.
Good for him.
So he's talked about a song that he wrote, or some of the albums he released, or songs he wrote sort of during lockdown or recently. He's been quite prolific recently. And one song he talked about a coal mine disaster in the United States that I probably should know about, but I didn't know about, where 27 miners lost their life.
Mhm.
And then he went on to say, whilst introducing the song, that it wasn't a coincidence that this mine or the miners or what didn't acknowledge the union or whatever, and
Yeah.
then he said it, then it's been tactically sort of pro union, said it wasn't a coincidence that the miners died in that mine, because that mine was not a the workers weren't unionized, or the owners of the mine or whatever didn't acknowledge the union, whatever. Whereas anyway, so then he said unions are important, and he's had a good well, there was no wrath, but the song was full of wrath, because he spoke in the song. He met with one of the miners who survived. I can't remember his name, called Tom someone, who'd just come up from the mine minutes before the disaster struck, and he was and Steve Earle said he was very angry, very, very angry, and he met with him and spoke to him, and then he wrote this song about the 27 people who died, and in the middle of the song he said all their names, and it was a very touching moment. But then he as part of that announcement, he talks about the importance of unions as looking after the workers, and then that also linked to something else of Black Deer, that Richard Newbold on our little Tweeters WhatsApp, as I'm not really, well, I did do quite a few tweets about Black Deer, but I'm not really on the Twitter sphere much. I have a little look now and again, and Richard Newbold told me that his boss, who must be head of science at the school he works at in Tunbridge Wells, that she was at Black Deer, and I then looked on her profile to see what she looked like in case I randomly bumped into her. I'm gonna have to find it now. And she had tagged as her in her Twitter profile I don't strike because I want more pay. I strike because of there's not enough for everybody, for the good of everybody, really, etc., etc. It's a nice little You've probably seen it before. I'm going to try and find it whilst you pick up on what I've said, Ed.
Yeah, well, Steve Earle has been a strong proponent of the trade union movement for many, many, many years. And when I first came across him, I didn't really know a great deal about country music, and I didn't know that the vast majority of commercial country is very conservative in its nature. But I heard people like Steve Earle, people like Waylon Jennings, people like like Willie Nelson, who sing without that passion and that anger. It made sense to me. I think I already knew about Billy Bragg, and in a way it kind of made sense. It is working class music. It isn't really, but it definitely pretends to be, and it talks about ordinary people's lives. That's generally the topic of country and Americana, is the lives of poor people, often the dispossessed. And it's quite right. They come from a place of righteous anger, isn't it? I mean, and Steve Earle, I mean, he has had a rough, given that he has been a successful and reasonably wealthy musician his entire life, he's also had a rough ride, including the terrible story about of his son, but also his his battles with drugs and alcohol are well known, and they don't talk. He was great friends, wasn't he, with Townes Van Zandt, who is another amazing songwriter, amazing performer, died far too early, and a lot of his life marked with alcoholism and also codeine addiction. We wouldn't have thought people would get too addicted to codeine, but before OxyContin, codeine was a pretty good high, wasn't it? Yes. Anyway, I've got a huge amount of time and a huge amount of respect for Steve Earle, and we've talked about him probably more than people were expecting on a teacher podcast. But what album would you say? I first came across him around the time of Copperhead Road, so that's still the album.
I only really came across him much later. There was an album probably released in the very early 2000s that I can't remember the name of it. It's the only I bought on CD. Then I bought Copperhead Road.
Copperhead Road must have been 80 something, mustn't
it? Copperhead Road's back then. Yeah, way back. But what's it called? Something Parade? Something Parade? I really liked it. I can't remember now what it's called. But he played lots of lovely songs. I'm now just looking for this damn link. Newbold. He's replied to me.
Look at that.
Oh,
I said 86. It was 88. How embarrassing.
you're good, aren't
Shocking.
you?
No, that's I was way off there. That's the peak of when I should have been about music. You know, I'm born in 71. So stuff recorded about 86 is the stuff that hits me the hardest, you know, because it's that music that you hear when you're 15 and 16 that marks you for life, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a huge difference to me between a song released in 86 and 88. That's about a decade between those two in my musical experience. Well, shame.
Oh gosh, I can't find this thing. Newbold. Where's he replied to? I need to find. Maybe I need to look in
Is he on?
replies.
He won't be. You listen to when he walks the dog, won't he? He won't be on now.
No.
He'll be
I'm
listening.
on Twitter trying to find.
Listening. I could have commented. Yeah, well.
Oh
no.
Yeah. No. Hang on.
This is great
Nearly
radio.
found
Us
it.
making
Sorry,
old
this is
man
really good
noises.
radio, everybody. Really good radio. Because I wanted to find it because it's quite a good read, I thought. But you see, I don't have that because I'm. Oh, I'm not. This is not working now. Sorry, I failed. Okay. But anyway, so I think the anger, we've spoken about this quite a lot. The underfunding of state education, the sort of a rather oppressive nature of how we're sort of measured and judged as a profession, and undervalued by successive governments, particularly successive Conservative governments, is a huge issue. But it's not. I'm a sort of step away from that because I've elected to work in and been educated in the independent sector, which is not without its challenges. But if you're going to work in a thriving, oversubscribed independent school, then there's a reasonable amount of money sloshing about the place, and it's not a fair world in that respect because 93% of the population don't have access to that level of privilege, and that of course is a whole separate issue, but one I can't talk too passionately about as I would be hypocritical. So there we are. But I think I don't know where it's not getting very far with it, are we? The whole striking in it's not really working, is it yet? There's no.
What do you want from? What do you think it's going to do? Do you think you're going to persuade this shower in Westminster to go? Oh, we see the light. I was reading there's a new book by Dapo Ariola and Nathan Bryan in the series. You'll have come across Look Up, story of a little girl called Rocket and her big brother who. Have you seen that one? It's a beautiful book, lovely. There's a new one out called Speak Up, and they go to the library and learn that the library is closing down because there isn't enough funding to keep it open, and they Rocket and her friends get together and they have a little protest and shame the city and save their library. So we did that in an assembly yesterday, and we were talking about what can we learn from it and how's it referenced, and we were talking about the importance of speaking up. And so if you are not halfway through the book, because it's very unlikely that a group of pre-teens doing a little sit-down protest is going to change much. So we talked about that. I paused the book, said, do you think that Rocket making a fuss is going to change the city's mind about closing the library? Most of the kids agreed they thought it probably wouldn't because they're not stupid. I said, is it important that they speak up anyway? And the children resounded, yeah, of course it is. They said, because if you don't speak up, then you've got to blame yourself when the thing comes through. If we do not make our voices heard, if we do not make clear, not least to our communities, because our communities aren't really aware of what's going on. Most head teachers don't put in the newsletter, by the way, the gas bill, the electricity, the fuel bill has tripled. I've got no more money, and now they're asking me to pay the support staff extra, which includes paying for their pensions and paying for all the on costs. We can't do it anymore. We're broken. We're very, very happy that these 3 people have decided to leave at the end of the year. And let me tell you, we cannot afford to replace them. We don't tend to say that in the newsletter.
No.
We tend to say everything is marvellous because we're afraid that if the parents knew how close we are to the whole thing just crashing into the weeds, they would take their children out, because maybe they would,
But
So
then
if
where
I
would they
say to my
where would
parents,
they
listen,
send their
we're on
children though?
strike, it's not about the money in my pocket, it's not about that, but it is about services for your children. If they agree to pay me an extra 6.5%, but that money comes out of existing budget, who do you think is affected? They need to understand that, and there's only one. It's very hard to get the attention of busy working people who just want to drop their kid off and believe that they're roughly safe and probably being educated till they pick them up a few hours later. And I'm sorry, but sometimes industrial action, I think we're speaking to our communities. I also think we're speaking to ourselves as a profession, saying we do care. We are angry, and we're rightly angry, and we're taking action together. We don't think that Nick Gibb or any of that party are going to go, oh, they seem to be quite angry, maybe we should listen to them. Of course they're not. They're doing this because they want to take the opportunity to paint us as feckless lefties. It plays into their hands, frankly. But on this occasion, I think you've got to do it. You've got to do it. Yeah. Okay, well, they say, oh, look at the damage being done to the children's education. And honestly, you look at the state, a school which was employing, let's say, 30 human beings in people-facing roles 10 years ago, let's say, or 7 years ago, probably hadn't changed much by 7 years ago. They're probably down to about 20 now. Those intervention groups aren't happening anymore. We're now talking about, why was it that we started saying that quality first teaching was so important and the only way to make a real difference to disadvantaged children? Oh, it was about the time we laid off the teaching assistants because we couldn't afford to employ them anymore. We found some very convenient evidence which fitted the traffic in education away from employing people and towards putting crap on a screen. I'm sorry, if I sound angry, that's all right. If I sound intemperate, that's not all right. So I hope that my anger's not tipped over into.
No, it's good. I want. That's really. I'm pleased that we, although very few people listen to this.
Currently, no one.
It's
I think.
important.
Am I right? Is there anyone
it's
out
important,
there?
And it's very eloquent and passionate.
And
you are.
Anybody is listening.
You were right. You're good, Ed. You're good. You were a good man, and you are absolutely right to speak out and say these things. And
well, we must do, mustn't we? We can't blame anybody else if we don't make our voices heard. So anger is an energy. Maybe wrath is the bit of anger when it takes away the energy and makes you feel disempowered. Maybe that's what we should think of it as. The sin is allowing your anger to divert you from the proper action.
Yes, good wisdom words, good words. Are you going to play us a song?
I should do an assembly. Is it time?
Yeah.
Is it? I have no idea what the time is. Oh, it's 21:57. Yeah. I'm also feeling, as well as wrathful, I'm also feeling a bit sad today. I've got some sad news today about the death of someone who's very special. So I shan't go into it, but if someone particular is listening, then know that we'll sing this for you as well, because it is a shame when people we love pass away, whatever the circumstances.
Absolutely. It is. Yeah. It is, definitely.
All right, well, okay. So we've been talking about Steve Earle more than I think either of us thought we were likely to, but I've got a great love for his work, so here we go. Just when every ray of hope was gone, I should have known that you would come along. I can't believe I ever doubted you. My old friend the blues, another lonely night in a nameless town. If sleep don't take me soon, you come around. I know that I can always count on you. My old friend the blues, lovers leaving friends will let you down. And you're the only sure thing I have found. No matter what I do, I'll never lose my old friend the blues. Lovers leaving friends will let you down, and you're the only sure thing I have found. No matter what I do, I'll never lose my old friend the blues. Just let me hide my weary heart in you, my old friend the blues.
Oh, that was lovely, Ed. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, beautiful song. I think a lot of people think it's a Proclaimers song, but it's a Steve Earle song originally, and a very beautiful one. Anyway, it's time to go, innit?
It's time to go. Well, I don't think we've gone down Lucy's rabbit hole about internal sort of wrath within a school between teachers or between systems or between
the wrath that eats us up inside and consumes us. That wrath as well.
Yeah,
we didn't go there.
That's right. No, and then, but next week, what have we
Sin of
got
the
left?
week.
Pride, lust, jealousy,
various forms of things.
We're not going to do jealousy, are we? Because we've done envy, and we I don't think we can make a show out of that. Pride, because we did pride
in the name of love.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We can definitely do that. I think pride. What are you proud of, and why is that a sin? Come on, that's not a sin.
Talk about it next week.
We'll get into that next week. But right now, we're going to say good night and sleep tight and look after yourselves, everybody. Life's precious. Hold on to it.
Indeed. And thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for listening back. Speak next week, Ed. Take care of yourself too, and until next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.